Thank you very much, Hillel, for that very kind introduction. I'm very, very pleased to be here. I'm joined by my colleague from the mission, Sarah Hunter, whose job it is to make sure that I don't stray too far from the path that's been set out by the Government of Canada for my remarks today. And I can only say good luck to you, Sarah, for that mission. We're really, really pleased to be here with so many colleagues, as well as with activists in the human rights community, people who have shown great courage and extraordinary eloquence in living their lives and pointing out to the rest of the world just how terrible this oppressive regime in Iran really is. This has been a very exciting week at the UN because it's the first time that we've really been back in person. And it's been a celebration of women's equality, which is quite, I think, a very important foundation of the principles of the United Nations. And we have had a number of meetings and celebrations and conferences and talked about the critical importance of these issues. And there's sometimes that people will say, I think the Secretary General said the other day that if we go at the current pace, it'll be 300 years before we get to where we need to get to. And I hesitate to disagree ever with the Secretary General, but I'm going to disagree because I think what he is underestimating is this. If the kind of oppression that we've seen in Iran had been met with total indifference inside and outside the country, and if everybody was just prepared to just put up with it and not ever question or challenge it in any way, shape, or form, then, yeah, I would agree. If this is the way people behave in the face of this terrible cruelty and discrimination, then yes, it is. It will take a long time. But that's not what's happening. That's not what is happening today. It's not happening in Iran. It's not happening in Myanmar. It's not happening in Russia. It's not happening in Ukraine. It's not happening in all kinds of places around the world where women and men are leading the fight. And they're taking the fight to the world. And the world is having to respond. We can't sit back and say there's nothing we can do. Iran is a sovereign country. They're allowed to do whatever they want inside their country, which is, yes, Iran is a sovereign country. No, they're not allowed to do anything they want inside their country. These are very important principles of international law that we've fought for a long time. So I think it's really critically important that we take this opportunity to focus on what's happened the last few months. First of all, I think we have to pay extraordinary tribute to a young woman who just wanted to be herself and just wanted to dress the way she wanted to dress. And that's all she wanted to do. And as a father of 3 daughters, and I can tell you, I realized as soon as my children hit adolescence that deference was gone as a social phenomenon, disappeared. They wanted to be who they wanted to be. And so I think the feeling of the world went out to the family of Mahsa Amini because she showed so much courage in just doing that one thing. And yeah, it triggered something. It triggered a reaction around the world, and it triggered a reaction inside Iran. And the reaction is not over, and neither is the oppression. The poisoning is just the latest example of just how bad it can be. Just when you think, well, we've hit a certain bottom here, no, you say, no, there's no bottom for the cruelty, and there's no bottom to the injustice. But there's also no bottom to the courage. And I think that's my last point that I want to make. When you think about it, the thing that actually allows change to happen is a few things. People being less afraid, deciding to be less afraid, and not allowing their lives to be dominated by fear. People having a fundamental sense of hope, that is, that it's got to get better. It just has to. And finally, courage. A willingness to say, yes, we have to advance this. We have to take steps, not foolhardy steps in every instance. It has to be carefully thought out how it's done. But that courage, I think, is putting all of us in a very uncomfortable place. And I think that's where we should be, in a very uncomfortable place. Do we have less courage than they do? Do we have less conviction than they do? Are we prepared to sit back and do virtually nothing? Well, many countries are in that position, frankly, but many of us are not. We're trying to figure out what more can we do? What steps can we take? How do we make sanctions actually work better? And how do we expose the hypocrisy, the double standards, the cruelty, and the nonsense that is spoken at the UN in defense of why we can't do anything? I was really delighted to be able to play that role. And yeah, it was fairly spontaneous, actually, when I did it. But it just occurred to me as I was listening to the arguments that what people were really saying is, there's no provision anywhere that allows us to do this, so we can't do it. And I'm a lawyer. Well, you say, well, if there's no provision anywhere, that means they can't stop you from doing it. As long as you can get the numbers and make the arguments, you win. You win. That's the way it is. So we have made progress. We have made progress, but we have a long road to go. And I just want to say how much I'm looking forward to listening to our guests today, and who I think are going to chart the course for us and teach us something more about what we need to do. I honestly believe, in my heart of hearts, that we will see the day in my lifetime, which should be very encouraging for all of you, where freedom and democracy come back to Iran. I really believe that. I don't believe it's impossible. And people who say, no, it can't happen, it can't, you say, no, you're underestimating people, and you're underestimating the problems, and you're underestimating the resilience and the will, but also you're underestimating how that light stays alive all the time. And I really believe that this is what's going to happen. So thank you all very much. It's great to be with you. Thank you.